get is, I don't know anything about racing. This is true. You're right. You're in the wrong show.
Yeah.
You're watching the wrong show if you want to hear like super engineer stuff.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Hitting the Apex, joined by Evan. As always, we are anticipating a start from the pit lane for Jazz, so he should be with us at some point today. We'll see.
Apparently, he had a little bit of a Ferrari incident where he wrecked before the race even started.
Yeah, he pulled over. I mean, he just that was what Leclerc in the sprint race when they sent them out there when they shouldn't have.
Oh yeah. Push it a little too hard. It's like that old meme that we always see. To push it a little too hard there, bud.
Yeah, we can start. Well, I mean, that was part of the drama from the weekend. Shout out to Carly, Brandon.
I agree, Brandon.
Yeah, no, not only was it the best, that's definitely the best race of the season so far. And yeah, Miami's it's a good track. There's overtaking possibilities, but it's tough. It's intricate, and the ball's right there. It's kind of a good mix.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. It was an entertaining race, and I think these guys are starting to get used to this track too, getting into it already. The track overall, what we said the past few seasons that it's a street circuit, it's a temporary circuit. I mean, looking ahead, now they're saying that it's going to be there until 2041, which is a topic that I'm sure we'll get into a little bit more later on.
Yep.
It shows that it has produced exactly what we want to see, which is good racing. We talk about this every single week on this show, that the main point about us watching this series and Formula One in general is we want to see good racing. And a few of these races this year have been kind of snorefest. We talk about Suzuka, overall, but this was a great race, I feel like, and even though most of our predictions didn't pan out the way that we thought that they were going to, it was an overall entertaining race from the front of the field to the back.
Yeah, well, a good segue. Let's talk predictions. So for the sprint, Carly and you had Max, Jazz and I had Lando, so got that right. Totally skill from Lando there to luck into that one. And then Brandon also for the race. Brandon didn't give a sprint pick that I saw, at least, or picked up on. For the race, Brandon had Lando, George, and Max. Carly had Lando, Max, Oscar. I had Lando, Oscar, Max. Jazz had Max, Lando, Leclerc. You keep hope alive, man. And then you had Lando, Oscar, Max. So none of us had the championship leader. We all went elsewhere. He turned around and won it.
Yep.
And then in terms of the surprise picks, Evan, you nailed it. Alvin top 6.
Well, until the penalty, because now he's classified lower because of the penalty.
I thought the penalty was in the sprint race.
I don't think so. I think it might have been the main race. We got to check that.
Hold on. If only I'd taken notes here. And let's see the race. Albon finished 5th in the race. His penalty was for the sprint race.
Okay. That's what it was for.
Yeah, and that's
wasn't sure which one it was.
That costed the points in the sprint race.
Okay. Because he went back to went from 4th to 11th, right, in the sprint race or something like that.
Yeah, that's why. Because especially since it ended under safety car, any time penalty to the back you go. Which is what happened to Max as well, which we can talk about in a minute, because he screwed Antonelli. He didn't. His team did. He had nothing to do with it. He's just gonna go when they say go. But and then let's see. So the other picks we had were let's see, Sainz top 5 from Jazz. He did not do that. I had George Russell DNF. He did not come through. And Carly had Gasly top 5, which didn't happen.
No. Not at all.
So, but yeah, no, there was a lot of drama. So I guess we'll start with the let's start with the sprint race a little bit. So from the sprint qualifying to the race, it was Antonelli put it on pole, and just ahead of the McLaren. So I mean, we all, I mean, you in particular, Carly, and the Chaswell kind of talked him up as a dark horse for this week, and for the qualifying he delivered, and then kind of screwed on the first corner. I mean, you can see the talent as well as that he's still got some maturing to do. He kind of threw it away in the first corner.
Yeah, I mean, the fact of the matter is you saw him in that qualifying come out there and put it on pole against some of the best drivers, or arguably the best drivers in the world, and that's impressive for a kid his age. And you got to give him his props for that. We've been talking about all year that these kids are really starting to do pretty good between him and Hajar, and a couple of the other guys. So it was nice to see him do that. It was nice to see the reaction of the grid. All the way up and down. You could see all the different drivers and team principals that really giving them their congratulations, because I think that genuinely that this is a kid that's pretty liked overall. I don't think anybody's really got any ill will towards him yet. I mean, I guess that all come to fruition in the future. We'll see what happens with him down the line, but overall, it's good to see him come out there, fresh face, super happy, super excited. You could see how you could hear in his voice, the radio messages coming from him to his team after they told him that he got pole, how enthusiastic he was. And that's always good to see. You get a Max getting pole, and it's like, all right, cool. All right, let's go get the next one. With him, it was the genuine excitement that we all love to see in racing, and it's fun to watch, as well as going into the race, like you were saying. It's going to be tough going into that turn one on those. They were all in intermediates, if I'm not mistaken, and in that weather, even though he has said that he's pretty comfortable in the wet weather. You got two cars right behind you that are super fast with more experienced drivers, at a circuit that is relatively difficult going into that turn one. So I kind of saw that coming. Having Lando get past him, having Max get up there, basically seeing him fall back, but then still stayed pretty much up there for the rest of the race. So I thought the sprint race overall was good. It kind of, funny enough, it kind of reminded me of like a mini version of the main race last year, where it was Lando staying out a little bit longer than everybody, and then getting the advantage with the safety car right at the end, and then kind of finishing the day off like that, where he got that help from the safety car and was able to turn it into a victory. So it kind of was like a mini version of the 2024 Miami Grand Prix, which was good for me as a Lando fan, but I'm sure everybody else would have liked to see a little bit more racing.
Yeah, I mean, ironically, because he was behind Piastri.
Mm-hmm.
Piastri got priority, so they pitted him first, which was the undercut, which is the right move. And then in the extra lap, Lando was doing, the safety car came out, and he ends up keeping the lead because he can pit and come back out still in front. It's a
Exactly.
Safety car. So yeah, I thought that was different than last year. Last year he was leading the race anyway. The safety car just put it away, because remember, he was in front. Safety car came out. The safety car screwed up and picked Max up instead.
Yeah.
Just at default, Max must be winning. Picked him up. And so Lando basically got to go around a full lap, pit, and come out in front of the safety car again, because the safety car picked the wrong car up. Eventually, he had to slow and let the safety car back in front and take his place behind it. So if they'd picked Lando up correctly, he still was in front. The safety car had to kind of wait for him to come around again.
Yeah.
And then he should have let the whole field go through and picked up the lead car, in which case Lando would not have been able to pit. Because remember, McLaren kind of screwed the pit stop up, and he came out 30 seconds ahead because he pitted in front of the safety car while the safety car was holding up the rest of the field. This year he flatly was just in second. He was not going to win this. And then the free pit stop. Hamilton also had switched to mediums and was making a charge up the field and was the fastest guy on track when that happened. He did finish third, but there was potential that had that not happened, he might have pushed the McLarens a little bit, because he seemed to be. That car seemed to be working better in that damp condition than the McLaren did, because he set the fastest lap and was charging through the field when the safety car came out. This is true. Like Japan was terrible. Shout out to Jeff as well. So that was interesting. I thought for Antonelli, I think it was just Oscar got a better start and beat him off the line. And so that, I think that's where you're talking about, kind of understanding where you are with the damn conditions. Sometimes you just got to slot into second, and he didn't do that. And not doing that, he lost momentum and lost a bunch more, overshot the corner, which he was never gonna hold that line through the right left turn there and retain the lead. He got beat off the line and it was done.
Yeah.
So that's kind of a lesson learned for him. But yeah, he would have still, finished near the top of the sprint race if not for Red Bull released Max into him.
Yeah.
So he came in to switch to mediums. Max was pitting in front. Max pulled out of his pit box right into Antonelli, who got hit, car got damaged, and swerved and had to skip his pit and basically came back out on intermediates. Did another lap on that. And then the safety car came out, and at that point, there's no point in pitting because he's gonna just lose more spots and not there would, I think at that point there's not going to be any more green flag racing, so no point. So that
basically served a drive-through penalty.
Yeah, it wasn't. I mean, Red Bull's had issues with their pit indicators all year. I don't know what is going on with that. That could have been a lot worse than it was. I mean, that wasn't even. I mean, sometimes they do like an unsafe release where it's like, oh, I had to slam on the brakes. He just right into him. Like it wasn't even close. I don't know what they were doing there.
Yeah, and then he finished the race off like Leclerc did in China with half a wing. So I was like, you could just tell that there's something not right with the way that they're executing that. I'm sure they'll get it fixed. They'll switch out of personnel, or they'll have somebody else, doing the release, calling for when the release is, because there's no way a professional team like this should be having this many issues, this far into the season. It's something that is kind of, it's dangerous. They say unsafe release, realistically, this we've seen accidents on the pit lane. It's not just that these drivers are out there in these cars wearing helmets, wearing protection. There's also other human beings that are just standing around. If he would have clipped him hard enough, Antonelli would have spun, gone into 3 or 4 or 5, 6, 7 different guys and could have seriously injured somebody there. So I mean, maybe it needs to be something that they need to look into harder, see what it is that they're doing wrong in these situations that's affecting these. We know that it was a technical issue. What was it, in Japan, I believe it was, that they had an issue with that. But, these things shouldn't be happening at this level.
Yeah, and there is a manual override on that thing. And again, that was not a close one. That was... And as you said, if Antonelli had tried to actually make the pit box, he would have spun. The reason he didn't spin is because
he turned out.
Max, hit him. He straightened out and just basically rode the hit, and just went straight. If he had tried to get into his pit box, it would have, he touched the back, it spins out right into all of his pit crew standing there. So, that would have been a huge. They would have had to, honestly, it would have led to a change in the sport.
Yeah.
They would have changed the way they do pit stops, because it is dangerous to stand. It's part of the sport, but it's dangerous to stand out there. You think anywhere else on the track, no one's standing near the cars where they're just running, except in the pit lane, which obviously there's a speed limit there, and so they're going slower, but they're still going, faster than you wouldn't stand like a foot from an interstate highway. You're going that fast. Like their slow speed is that. So like it's dangerous if they hit you. And we've seen incidents where they overshoot the pit box and people break bones or anything, but this would have been way worse.
Yeah.
So because it wasn't even, it would have basically hit him at speed because of the way he got hit. So Yeah, fortunately, no one got hurt. That ruined his race. We talked about this earlier. Max got a penalty, so he dropped out of the points as well. So yeah, it was, and again, not just to be not Max's fault at all. He's just waiting for the indicator and going, and it's on the team to make sure that is accurate. It was not. Anything else from the sprint race stand out for you?
I just, the one observation I have from it is I just think that it's a little too short. I think they probably need to add another 5%, 10% to the sprint races. I know that they want to keep it short because they want to have that no stop possibility or whatever it may be. I just think that like this weekend or when we saw Max come out or Lewis come out and switch the tires and make a strategy decision. But he whether there was a full green flag running or not, I still don't think there was enough time for him to be able to make up those spots and come back up to challenge for the lead. So it's like it's almost as if they're going to run these sprint races. If you qualify first, you're going to end up first, more than likely, unless there's a situation like this where there was rain and you had a rookie in first and there was some type of a passing opportunity that was made because of that. I just think that they need to, if they added maybe an extra 10% to it, 5, 10, laps, something like that, make it instead of, what was it, 24 laps, I think it was, or something like that. If it was 30 laps, it makes it a little bit more, a little bit easier for there to be a little bit more strategy involved with it. Not like how it was, at what was the last sprint race where there was no stops. They just ran the entire race on the one tire and everything was fine. So I guess, like I said, that's my only observation, especially at this track here. Maybe at other tracks it'll be a little bit different, but at least at this track here, I feel like they could have added an extra couple laps that would have helped it out a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I think the point is it's not supposed to be like the race, right? So I think I don't know if they're going to do that. I think they want to keep it shorter so that they don't want I think they also don't want the teams to be able to get a lot of data on the actual strategy to use in the race. It is supposed to be a little bit of a opportunity for some of them, maybe the backfield, to try different things, take some risks because the teams at the front aren't going to want to throw their race away. And so I think with that, I think that's why it's intentionally short like this. But this one definitely, could have. I mean, the racing was great this weekend, so like more everything. But there's some of these sprint races where you're 5 laps and you're like, just end it.
Yeah.
So like, what are we doing? They're driving in a circle. No one's taking any chances. Everyone's like under control because they don't want to wreck their race. They got to qualify in like an hour. And it's just like, but the racing, like you said, the racing was so good this weekend that you wanted more of it just constantly. So
exactly.
So yeah, maybe for certain track, I don't know. You can just come back to Miami more than once, and then problem solved.
There you go.
All right, so on to the race itself. Obviously, Oscar won from Lando in second, and they lapped the whole rest of the field pretty much. 30 seconds back from there to George Russell, and then Max behind that, and then Albon, as you predicted in the Williams, Antonelli, the 2 Ferraris, then Sainz, who kind of threw the 7th place away. He caused a lot of that Ferrari mess by like not paying attention when the VSC ended, and getting jumped by both of the Ferraris. And then the last in the top 10 is Yuki. So I guess let's start with the turn 1 incident. So Max and Lando both actually got good jumps, but Max a little bit better, and obviously was already in front because he qualified on pole. So he pulled out in front. Looked like Lando was content to slot behind him into second. And then Max locked up in the first quarter and went wide into the turn 1. He's still on the circuit, but went deep, which opened the wide open. Again, it's a right left, so opened up the inside for Lando to sweep through, which he tried to do, and then Max just went across the track and pushed him off essentially.
This is where I wish we could show replays on this channel.
We will get copyright flagged. FOM. We've actually done that on our basketball show. We showed like a clip like clips to like talk about plays, and they flagged it, and the stream kept cutting out in the middle, and we got a bunch of emails.
Wow.
And so like they are actively monitoring all the streams, so that's why we don't do that. But yeah, so forced Lando off. He rejoined in sixth. And that was kind of the race because the McLarens were that much better. They were, he did a really good job navigating back up to second, but and Piastri obviously ended up, in third, and then taking Max and just leading from there. But so really that first corner kind of did determine the winner. At least there's a lot of other stuff we're going to talk about because as we've been saying, it was a great race, kind of up and down the field. But what were your thoughts on that incident? Obviously, no penalty was assessed.
Yeah.
What were your thoughts there?
I mean, I agree that there shouldn't have been a penalty, but there was a definite juke by Max Verstappen. I think Lando's gotten to this point now to where any movement that Max does kind of puts him off kilter because he's so used to Max just running him off the track. He's seen him, multiple times, multiple tracks. Look at, the Red Bull Ring last year. Look at, even Japan this year coming out of the pit lane. There's so many incidents where we can look back at Max kind of, just jerking that car over towards Lando and Lando overreacting away from it and putting himself in a worse position. Like I said, we saw that, it happened in Japan where he ended up going off the track. If he would have stayed on the track, and, just slotted in behind Max, maybe there would have been a better chance in this situation. You can clearly see in the replays, Max jerks and opens up a little bit to get to the next corner, but by doing that, it kind of sent Lando off. Lando went off the track, and that's where he dropped all the spots. I've said this in the past about a lot of these drives that Lando has. It was a great recovery. I'm going to focus, though, on this race in particular to kind of prove the point, because I'm sorry, he was the fastest car on that track on Sunday. He started that last stint when he finally got past Max Verstappen 19 seconds behind Oscar Piastri. Now, you can say what you want about Oscar saying, I'm in front, I'm just going to cruise, I'm not going to care. But Lando brought 19 seconds and got it down to, what, 4 at the end? 3 at the end? Something like that?
No, he was only 6 off of Oscar after they got the free VSC pit. So it was 6.9 or something. So it got down to 4.
But because remember, Oscar got past Max, and that's where he took off. That's when Lando was fighting Max. Oscar got up to 9. It was almost 19 seconds, if I'm not mistaken. I'll have to go back and look, but it was close to that 19, 18 second mark, and Lando brought it back. Lando got back on or back up there to him to the point to where at the very end of it, we were sitting there thinking if there was another 5 laps, Lando was going to be right on his tail. Lando was going to be in position. Now, you go into dirty air, and how does the car work in dirty air? Would the team have even allowed them to fight? That all is speculation. We'll never be able to know. But the fact of the matter is Lando was the fastest car on that track the entire day. If that turn 1 incident hadn't happened, he would have dominated this race, just as much as Oscar did. It's kind of opportunistic, or kind of not opportunistic. What's the word I'm looking for? It's kind of hindsight, looking at it, saying that Oscar dominated, because yes, he did dominate, but again, I don't think he was that much quicker than Lando that we can say that he was the fastest car out on the track the entire time. Because realistically, I don't think that was the case. I think what happened was
that hasn't been the case of many of the races Oscar's won. It's Lando making a mistake, or Lando screwing up in qualifying, or in the race. I mean, I can't remember which track it was at where Lando, crashed in qualifying.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, just threw it away there. He was faster the whole weekend, right up until Q3. But I'll say in this instance, look, I think he was content to, again, slot into second, thinking my car is faster, I'll get Max eventually. But when you see him lock up and run deep, you got to go for it. What's he going to – I mean, it's easy for us to say now that the car was so much faster that it was stupid. But at the time, you don't know that. Max qualified on pole.
Yeah.
So, you're the trail car. You know how much better the McLaren is in clean. You know how much better all these cars are in clean air.
Yeah.
And you see Max lock up and open the lane up for you. You got to go for it. Like I know these new rules of engagement means Max does not have to leave him room, so he didn't. I mean, Max intentionally pushed him off. Let's be real here.
Yeah.
That's now legal.
Yeah.
I said the same thing last week, or was it 2 weeks ago, whatever, when I was defending Max a little bit on when he got penalized in that, hey, where's he supposed to go?
Yeah.
Oscar took the whole corner. Like, where's he supposed to go? But he actually wasn't penalized he was penalized because he cut the corner and gained an advantage. So like it was not, and so in this instance he stayed on track, but he pushed Lando off. I mean, that's what happened.
Yeah.
And that's how he drives, and it's something with these new way that they're policing these things. It's going to be even harder to overtake him because you're allowing that used to be a penalty.
Yeah.
And by the way, a penalty wouldn't have mattered. You give him 5 seconds. Like Lando went back to 6.
Yeah.
The penalty would have mattered if he had retained second. He's right behind him and can't overtake. It's like, all right, what's going on here? But no, I mean, it wouldn't have. 5 seconds. He finished 35 seconds in front of Max. What was 5 seconds going to do? So the penalty wouldn't have mattered anyway. But I think it's problematic the way they're interpreting these, where they're saying that they don't have to leave room. That's not just a Max problem. We saw that throughout, where it's like, I got to worry if this guy's going to slide over and take all the. And then what am I supposed to? How do you overtake if the guy can just move over?
Exactly.
So to me, that's a problem with the way that they're doing this. You essentially have to get in front on the straight. You can't really overtake through the corner.
Yeah.
Because if you try to do that, they're allowed to just close the door on you and push you off. So I thought it was a correct ruling by the way they're interpreting the rules now, but I think it's ridiculous. I don't know how you're supposed to overtake if you can't. If you can't, like Lando was entitled to the outside of the track.
Yeah.
He went in the inside. He didn't cut. He went the wide side, left the whole track to Max. But Max was always going to push him. He wasn't going to let him through. So I don't know what Lando. It's easy. Like I know everyone's saying, oh, he was impetuous. He should have waited. He had a dominant car. You don't know that when you're in turn 1. After the race, you can see, oh, we were 30 seconds better. I should have just waited. But Max did it at Suzuka. We talked about took pole, held the lead through the first few corners, and then just coasted, won the race. Like, how do you know he's not going to do that? You have an opportunity to overtake. You got to go for it, and it didn't work out for him. But I have no issues. This is one time where I have no issues with how he conducted himself. That gap was there. You see the lead driver lock up, open the track up. You got to go for it.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know what else he was going to do. Kind of like, because even if he pulled slightly alongside, Max was going to push him off. He would have had to almost break and try to get in behind Max, which there wasn't really room to do anyway, because he went deep. So I don't think they should have assessed a penalty, because that's the way the rules are. Just like, I defended Max in Jeddah. So I'm like, there's no room there for him to go. No, he didn't have to drive straight across. Get 10 seconds off the road by cheating. That's a different thing entirely. But I was like, if he tried to make that corner, he's going to hit Oscar, because Oscar didn't give him room. But that's the rules now. So Max was technically ahead at the apex. The apex was back where he overshot it.
Yeah.
So that means he gets the whole corner, and you have to just stay behind him. So.
For sure.
The rules are stupid, but they were correctly and fairly applied. Lando paid the price for that, because, as you said, if he had even just slotted into second, again, 2020's hindsight, he would have easily gotten past Max and pulled a huge gap out, and it wouldn't have even been competitive. He was the fastest car all weekend, and
by far,
and I thought it was a good drive for him, because his recovery, unlike the last time where I know we kind of disagreed on his approach there. Remember, he got a penalty and all that last time, and tried to force his way back through.
Yeah.
This time I thought he was under control. He didn't get, antsy behind Max, knowing Oscar was pulling away. He navigated. He had to pass several cars because he fell back to 6. He just patiently worked through. One car at a time, didn't risk the car, knew the race would come to him, and as you said, was running off. Now, it's always hard to tell, is Oscar conserving at the end. You don't want to, this is I know it's in our favorite parking lot, but it is the street circuit with the wall right there. If you over push it and make a mistake, you're in the wall and the race is over. It's not So, he's going to be cautious up front. But
Yeah.
I thought Lando's approach was, I'm going to pick these guys off one by one and work my way through the field and maximize my points, was something we didn't see in previous races from him. Again, I don't really have any issues with what he did.
Yeah. Like I said, I fully believe that, like we were saying, he was the fastest car on that track on Sunday. Again, just like you just said, you said it perfectly. I think he did. I also agree that he did a great job working his way through there. I think that he got a little bit too hesitant, I guess you could say, when he finally got up to Max. Max was defending really hard. There was a video I saw on Instagram somewhere it had a Bugatti trying to race against a Volkswagen Beetle on Gran Turismo, and the Volkswagen Beetle was just staying right in front of the Bugatti and just kept on blocking him. So I kind of feel like that was almost what we saw on Sunday with that, because of how much faster that McLaren is than the Red Bull during the race. He really did hold him up a good amount. But also, if Lando would have maybe been a little bit more aggressive, he would have had a better shot at catching Oscar. And Oscar really did take off. I mean, there was situations, in that last stint when Lando, was in second place, that you saw him take, 4, 5, 6 tenths out of Oscar's lead, and he just couldn't make it up because there wasn't enough time. But overall, like we were saying, it was a great race. I think we can move on from that front battle and start talking a little bit about the rest of the guys, because down the field, man,
yeah, I do want to talk a little bit about Oscar's overtake on Max. I thought, he was having trouble getting around him, and he kind of used what we knew Max was going to do against him, which was when Oscar had the line on the outside, Max was going to push him off.
Yeah.
And so he just broke early and let Max overshoot the corner, which would have walled. He was going to wall Oscar out, so he couldn't overtake. So I thought that was really smart of him. And then that Lando Max battle, Lando overtook off track, gave him the spot back, and then overtook again. So I thought those were some really good overtakes up at the front. But let's talk about the. So where do you want to start with the rest of the field here?
I want to talk about Albon. I think
okay.
he had a great week this week. We talked at the beginning of last week about how we feel like the Mercedes engine was going to do good here, that they got a lot of power, and then they came out, and every single team that ran a Mercedes engine, I don't know if they said anything about Aston Martin, but I believe every single team that had a Mercedes engine swapped out their engines this week. They all ran brand new power units for this race. We're kind of at that point. They get 4 power units every year, so we're at the quarter mark for the season so far. So it's that time, and switching all that out, you saw the dominance of those engines. You saw how fast those Williams were going down the straights. They got a great package, and I think Alex, again, this year is showing that he is a quality driver. He is somebody who is the leader of that team, even though you do have Carlos Sainz in there now, which I think everybody expected was going to come out and be, that much better than Alex. But Alex has really stepped up and shown that he is, a top driver in Formula One, and can, push for, race wins if the opportunity arises, because something happens between Max and Lando, or something happens between Max and Oscar, or, those Ferraris have an issue. George has an issue. You're talking about a Williams podium coming up, pretty rapidly. And it's going to be interesting seeing how that team really keeps on developing throughout the year, or if they really start to focus in on 2026 and the regulations, because I do think that Williams is kind of a dark horse now for a race win, if not podiums, throughout the rest of the season.
I think they are already focused on next year, but they have 2 drivers that can drive, so they're going to continue to get results, because most of the field is, focused on next year and the next generation now. But it is clearly, getting Sainz in there with Albon. So now you have 2 actual drivers that belong in Formula One, which has been a long time since Williams has had that.
Yeah.
Definitely accelerating their development. They've done a good job hiring as well. And you can kind of see that showing up on the circuits now that they're not up there. This week they were faster than Ferrari, but they're not overall, right?
I mean,
but
that's debatable. I think they're neck and neck at this point.
I mean, they're pretty far down the points, which we're going to look at later. But
yeah, but with the eye test, I mean, they're down in the points because Carlos Sainz has had a few bad weeks learning that car. You know, you had Lewis Hamilton, who's probably the greatest driver of all time, you know, driving in the Ferrari.
I mean, it's 94-37.
Okay.
So, I mean, they have to do this more frequently. Even in this race where Ferrari was a disaster and we're praising Williams, it was, you know, in order: Albon, then behind him Leclerc, behind him Hamilton, behind him Sainz. So,
yeah,
you know, it's still, even in a race where we felt Williams was better, 2 Ferraris finished ahead of one of the Williams. So I think they're right below that level right now, and so it's McLaren, it's, you know, by themselves, then Max's Red Bull, then the Mercedes, again, 2 good drivers that are really pushing that car forward, and then Ferrari, and then Williams right behind there, which, you know, is shocking. And yeah, I think it's unfortunate that, you know, they're not really going to develop this car anymore because, well, they shouldn't. I mean, it's a waste of their resources. All these things are limited now. But, you know, if there was another couple of years in this car, maybe they could actually, you know, if they keep making steps, compete for race wins on this platform. But we'll see what they come up with for next year. But yeah, it is good to see them. You know, for those of us like us that, you know, used to them being at the back. So
yeah.
Yeah,
but it's good to see them being at least competitive now. You know, Williams is a classic team. It's really the last of the independent, you know, teams that was originally an independent owned team by, you know, one guy. You know, Frank Williams, you know, but he's a legend in Formula One and the history that team has. You know, even though they're now owned by some big giant conglomerate, you know, it's still good to see them up there. Yeah, it's like Ferrari is Ferrari. They're always going to be the most popular team in Formula One, but there's not a lot of teams that have the history and gravitas as Williams, you know, in the lexicon of Formula One in total. You know, they've had dominating teams, they've had dominating cars, they've had dominating drivers, you know. So when we saw them in the back of the field and not making the Bahrain test, you know, when Claire was still the you know, owner, team principal, whatever it was, her title was at that time, you know, that was really the low point. They've really built that car up now, really have developed it and gotten to a point now to where they're competitive. They're by far the in the top 5 with fastest cars on the grid. And like I said, I think that on a race day they can be up there with the Ferraris. You know,
they're closer to the Ferraris and the Mercedes, for that matter, than I don't even know who the next team is behind them. I guess
it'd be RB. Yeah, it'd be RB.
Yeah, the RB. I mean, there's a huge drop off from Williams to that. So they're up there with, you know, again, it's McLaren and then Max kind of up at the top level. And I would say they're in that second. They're not. I would still say they're behind, you know, Mercedes and Ferrari, but they're in that grouping with those two.
Yeah.
Which is a shocking statement, but it is definitely true.
Yeah. But and
then
like
there's
I said,
another grouping of kind of the rest of these teams that are below.
Yeah.
Like I said, I think that's good. They have done some amazing things with that car.
So, how about
what else is there? Let's see. There's the should we get to the drama of the Ferraris?
Yeah, I think I'm going to leave that one to you because I think that you have a pretty good read of the information that we have that happened, because it was interesting. But I'm going to leave that one for you because
they didn't actually air all the radio messages. So essentially, what happened is Hamilton. This actually starts because Hamilton starts on the hard tires. So when that VSC comes out, that obviously the McLarens took advantage of Hamilton switched to the medium. So now he would like the initial idea was he was going to run much longer on the hards, but free pit stop, you take it.
Yeah.
So now he's on the mediums and Leclerc is on the hard tires, so he's faster.
But he's behind Leclerc.
Yeah, he's faster than Leclerc, but he's behind him. When the VSC ended, first of all, Carlos kind of threw away was not paying attention. It was pretty clear. Got jumped by both of the Ferraris. So they come through. It looked for a second like Lewis might overtake them both in one corner, but I think because it's his teammate, he didn't like risk throwing it in there. So he ends up Leclerc, Hamilton, and then Sainz behind them, which they were holding Sainz off, but he was close enough where if they screwed around trying to swap places, he could be, a threat. So yeah, that set off a chain reaction because I think everyone's like, well, you gotta let Lewis through. He's on a different tire strategy. He's on a faster tire, and easy to use them while they're fresh because they're going to wear down late in the race. And you have Antonelli up the field, and instead they Ferrari'd it. So Hamilton was right behind Leclerc, and again, just for it's worth understanding that they're on different strategies, right? And so if they're on the same strategy, even then you often, hey, that guy's faster, let's let him through and see if he can, go get Antonelli, right? So they didn't do that, but they're on a split strategy, so it's even weirder that they didn't do that. But also, like, if you're the trail car or the lead car, you need your pit wall to be decisive and say, hey, this is what's happening. Because Hamilton needs to know, should I send this up the inside here and try to pass it?
Yeah.
Or are you going to let me through? Because right now, like, if I do that, we could wreck both cars. Like, I mean, so that's generally why the team comes in and says, just switch.
Yeah.
Like, you're on different strategies. Just switch it. We're wasting time. We're burning up both your tires. It's not good for anyone. Instead, Ferrari. So first Hamilton asked, are there people in front of Charles that I can go chase because I'm burning my tires? They said Antonelli's 6 seconds ahead. So then Hamilton comes on. do you want me to just sit here the whole race? Said I'll come back. They come back. I'll come back to you. And then they just said, just stay in Charles's DRS, which makes absolutely no sense. Like, what was he going to do? That didn't make any sense. So you could tell at first Hamilton was biting his tongue, and then he just kind of went off and pointed out that in China, when they were on different strategies, he moved aside and waved Leclerc through because he was faster and on a different strategy. So why aren't they doing it now? And then that was the first time they actually even asked Leclerc, and I think that's the interesting part that didn't, like, after the race, you can kind of see the transcripts and read and listen to the entire radio calls. They never even got Leclerc's opinion on it. Mm-hmm. And then when they asked me, it's like, yeah, we're on different strategies. Like, these are drivers that understand what's happening. So they move that, they swap the car. Of course, Hamilton's like, well, you have a T break while you're at it, which was funny. And so, but then it gets worse. So part of the stuff that didn't air, which they then played out later, is so after Hamilton at this point had used up his tires, or the part where they were faster. So he did open a little bit of a gap, and pretty much, towards the end of the race, the hards are now the better tire. So Leclerc is faster. So they decide they're going to swap the cars back. So Hamilton, he is running down Antonelli, but it doesn't look like fast enough to catch him. But also Leclerc isn't either. So they're basically giving Leclerc back the second that he was before they swapped him the first time.
Yeah.
But Hamilton asked, are you going to – they basically said they're going to swap the cars back. He's like, you don't think I can catch Antonelli? And they said, yes, basically. Like, no, you can't catch him. We swapped the cars back, and this is the part that didn't air. So when they swapped them back, they gave him, as the pit crew should, they give him the delta of the car behind him, which is Sainz. They said, you're 1.7 seconds ahead. And Hamilton came on the radio and said, do you want me to let Sainz through as well? And that is, this was like a classic Ferrari of just not making – these were obvious decisions. Like, you let Hamilton through immediately.
You let him try to chase
that. Do that, and then if he can't catch Antonelli, you let him put him back. Like, this was not. They made both the decisions way too late, and in fact, this did come through on air. when Leclerc saw where Antonelli was, saw where Hamilton was, he said, "No, don't swap it. It's going to waste more time, and then we'll never catch him." And then they swapped it.
Yeah.
He was like, "Leave me behind for now because he's close enough where like maybe Hamilton can catch him, but the act of him slowing down, me having to pass him, slows us both down so much that we're never going to catch. Like you waste like half a second to a second. You know, it takes us 2 laps to make that up. There's no point in doing that." And then they swapped them. So I feel like the drivers kind of know what's going on. Like, okay, this is what we should let each other through, and we know what we're doing. And the pit wall is just, I don't know how you rationalize them not just waving Hamilton through immediately when he's on a faster tire there. They're a bizarre bunch over there.
You know, one question I'd like to know is, at least between teammates, right? Between teammates, why don't they have an option to be able to, hey Charles, you know, do we want to switch now? Do we want to swap now? You know, at least, you know, the team can monitor it, but at least have the drivers be able to talk with each other that are on the same team. Because in that situation, I think, you know, just like you said, Leclerc would have been like, hey, you're on the mediums, I'm on the hards, get in front of me so we can try to catch Antonelli. Okay, cool. They would have made the decision by themselves right then and there. You know, I don't know if that's even something that anybody's ever thought of, but I think that would have made this whole situation a lot better. But obviously, they have to go through the intermediaries, and they have their bosses who are looking at them. You know, with Fred Vasseur or whatever is looking at them, and we all thought that him being in there was going to get rid of a lot of these Ferrariisms that we see, where you know they make these mistakes, you know, but overall, it's just one of those things. I think that they still kind of are placating towards Leclerc being the number one and you know, kind of trying to show him the favor. And I think that that's kind of where this was they were like, the times are a little bit too close to where we can clearly say that Lewis should be ahead. But at the same time, we don't want to, you know, tell Leclerc, hey, you're so much slower, you got to move, you know, you got to get out of the way, because Leclerc's still their guy, and I think they know that he's their guy, you know, for the future. Lewis is just there for, you know, in his words, a cup of tea, you know, with going off the radio message that he said, you know, this week about them having a cup of tea. So, and especially if they're going to keep on making mistakes like that, I don't think that you know, Lewis is going to be in the Ferrari for much longer either. You know, because it's a decision that needed to be made as soon as they brought Lewis in and put those medium tires on him. Hey, if we're behind Charles, we're going to put you ahead so that we can, you know, try to catch whatever car it is that's in front of us at that point. And the fact that they waited for them to be right on each other's nose to tail in DRS to say, hey, let's try to figure out what we're going to do, just shows a lack of you know, communication and teamwork between them.
Yeah, I don't know what they were thinking. And to your point, I think the drivers could have just handled it better. They didn't even approach Leclerc about this.
Yeah.
Until Hamilton yelled at them and made the T-break sarcastic comment. That was when they finally like passed Leclerc. I don't understand what they
was like. Go,
they
yeah.
seemed very concerned that Sainz was going to jump one of them for some reason.
Well, because that Mercedes engine or that Williams is fast. You know,
yeah, but
whether
that's
it's
not,
that fast or
their focus appeared to be more
behind.
Well, as you know, as Jeff is saying, you know, we are talking about them squabbling over 6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th here. So it's a Ferrari, so not good. But you know, the fact that they're like, let's just hold stace and make sure we get the 7th and 8th versus 7th and 9th, like, no, let them put the faster car in front, let him see what he can do. Like,
yeah.
It was a bizarre series of events. I don't understand what they were thinking, and yeah, very weird indeed. It's hard to rationalize anything that they're doing. I mean, this was not.
It didn't seem like a hard decision. It didn't seem like it should have been that hard of a decision, but they made it that hard.
No, and they screwed it up to the point that they basically upset both drivers, because Leclerc at the end was like, no, don't put me back in front. Then we're just stuck.
Yeah.
And they put him back in front, and they were stuck. And they could have done that in the last corner.
Yeah.
Right? They almost threw away. Ironically, because of the way they did that, Sainz almost overtook Hamilton the last corners. He got up next to him, and Hamilton held him off, but like he almost got eighth off of him because of the way they did that too. So just really, I mean, when you think every time you think that Ferrari is going to turn a corner there, they show their
true colors, the true Ferrari red.
Yeah, that was bizarre.
Oh, and can we say, did not like the livery change. I thought it was weak. Just as we talk about, as we thought about Ferrari, or we talk about Ferrari's colors and showing their true colors. Why can't they just give us a blue Ferrari? It's a historical color for the team. Nard, one of the greatest race cars in the 1960s, won Le Mans in a blue Ferrari. It's a classic team. Put that blue on the whole car. Give us one time, please, Ferrari, just one time, give us a blue Ferrari. You'll sell 1 million T-shirts and 1 million, little toy cars, die-cast cars of it. Give us a blue Ferrari just once, please. But they keep on teasing us and giving us just little bits. So, that was my rant on the livery change for them.
Yeah, it was. It looked terrible.
How'd you like the bright pink RB?
I mean, they matched it with their performance. I'll say that they did not disappoint on the performance there. Oof. I guess the last kind of thing to cover off of, a big story coming out of the weekend. Is there anything else before we talk about Alpine?
No. Like I said, I think, to close up the whole weekend for the race wise, I think it was a successful race. I will tell you from my business side of it, there was a very, very, very good amount of people at my current employer sitting there watching the race this week, to the point to where I didn't even do it, which usually is the case. But one of the other managers at the current restaurant I'm working at put on the sound for the race, which was a big surprise for me because I'm usually the one sitting there at whatever restaurant I'm at saying, I want the sound, I want to listen to it. And they're all like, nah, it's a Formula One race. But we had a good 10, 12 tables in the dining room with the Formula One race on a big screen. And a lot of people in there. There's a lot of McLaren fans. There's a lot of Red Bull fans. There's a few Ferrari fans. But it was just overall a good weekend for Miami. For the Grand Prix in total. I think the rain, even made it kind of interesting. There was a lot of people. I had one gentleman come into my restaurant who was going to go to the actual race. He's from the Bahamas. He was going to go to the actual race, but ended up not going and just coming in and sitting down at the restaurant and watching the race at the restaurant because there was that thought that there wasn't going to be rain on Sunday as well. But he was a Red Bull fan, so it was good to sit there and go back and forth with him, talking to him about the race. I told him, I said, watch by the first turn, Max is going to be, out of the race, and it ended up being that way, it seems. So, but like I said, I just want to wrap the bow on the actual weekend on that I think that it was good for the city. They're starting to kind of get it in a groove and keep it going till 2041. So
yeah, they did extend. So not knocking pink the color, knocking the way that RB used it. Everyone, it's funny to see these teams interpret what their color palette idea of Miami is. So, but yeah, all right, let's get to Alpine. So some news today as the team principal stepped down. Looks like a power play between Oaks and
Flavio Briatore.
Yeah, Flavio Briatore, and then it also looks like Jack Doohan is on his way out. So
yeah, it's an interesting situation. Obviously, Alpine, Renault, they're switching engines next year. There's a lot of change going from being a manufacturer team to being a customer team now. Having it to where they're going to be using Mercedes engines. So it's going to be really interesting to see how it all plays out. I do believe that it was a mutual resignation or mutual decision for Oliver Oaks to leave the team. Sorry about that. But on top of that, we do have Flavio Briatore coming back into the fold in F1 as a team principal. Technically, his role is still executive advisor or special advisor, but he will be doing he will be handling all of the responsibilities that Oliver Oaks had, and as the team principal. So basically we got Flavio back, which was something that I never thought I was going to say after the debacle of the situation that he had with Renault back in the day, Crashgate and all that stuff that we like to talk about as people who have been watching Formula One for a long time. We know that he was a fantastic team principal for a long time, and then there was some controversies, and he is one of the most controversial members of the Formula One lexicon and the Formula One history. He's one of those people that has a lot of pizzazz, and he's got a lot of gravitas in on that grid. He's kind of like Lawrence Stroll is in the same situation. He's got a magnetic pull to him, where people want to be around and people want to associate themselves with him. And I think that it's going to be interesting to see how they are moving forward. I can't wait to see how they're going to be with the Mercedes engine next year, and if they're really going to make a push towards that 2026 car, because Gasly's a good driver, man. I mean, we've seen him as a race winner before. We've seen that he is somebody who's quality, and to have him in this Alpine is kind of it hurts to see that. It hurts to see that he's having all this struggle, and then going into the Duhan situation. We wanted to see him come into the field and do decent like the rest of these drivers are, but that car just isn't up to snuff. And even though we did see Gasly have an okay performance a couple weeks ago, it's something that we kind of want to see even more moving forward, especially from a team as big as Alpine should have been. Renault is what, the number 1 car company in the world, like right there with or right behind Toyota, I think, is something like that. So to see them really be as far back as they are in the biggest stage in Formula One is really it's hard to see, knowing how good they could be and how good they were in the past. And who knows, maybe this change up with Flavio coming in and being the head honcho will give them a little bit of a boost and help out a little bit moving forward. How about you? What do you think about it?
I don't know. I mean, he's a criminal, so it's to me, this is problematic in general. Like, I don't think he should have been let back into the sport.
Yeah.
And pushing out someone that's kind of experienced there, and now Duhan's getting pushed out. Seems like just more chaos at a team that's repeatedly underachieved. I don't see a bright future for this team, but it's different than F1 used to be, where, I mean, you make money just by showing up, and that's what they appear to be content to do, versus actually compete for race wins, which is why they're pulling their engines out and we'll just buy an engine and circle the track and get paid. And that's that. This is the revenue sharing that F1 does now is completely changed the sport, in that we used to see the bottom 2-3 teams fold every few years and get replaced because there's I can't keep, there's no money, I'm not making money because now they revenue share, so they make money. So I think Alpine, which is really obviously Renault, Alpine is just their sports car brand. I feel like they're kind of quitting on this. I don't think Flavio Briatore in 2025 is the answer to anything. And the fact that they no longer want to do their own engines. It doesn't feel like the future is right there, and I think Duhan's getting scapegoated a little here. That car stinks. It stunk for several years now. So they forced Ocon out because he didn't get along with Gasly. Now Duhan's there for like a handful of races. Didn't look that bad. He outqualified Gasly this week, and obviously had the first corner incident with Bierman.
But is he out for sure? Or is it just speculation?
The rumor is they told him before leaving Miami they were going to replace him, but they haven't officially made like the press release. Okay. And I believe Colapinto's already said he's testing at the next track, or I mean, this is happening. That appears to be the all the signs point to this happening. But the car is terrible, so I don't know what they expect a rookie to do in it. This has been it's been a fall for them. Remember they had Utmar Staffauer, or however you say his name, in there. Staffauer, who was very respected and had run Aston Martin, and they pushed him out too. So it's hard to figure out what direction they're trying to go in. And the second they signed Colapinto, you knew like Duhan's clock was taken.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of like, did they just have buyer's remorse? Like, why didn't they just put Colapinto in the car to forget? Like, why even do this with Duhan? It's just, the whole thing just looks like, no one's really got a plan there. They have no business. I mean, we're talking about how great the Williams is, and justifiably, because they moved, they're performing above their station. Alpine's the opposite. You have a works team, as you said, one of the largest car manufacturers in the world. What are they doing in ninth?
Yeah.
like what is that? Like, that's just unacceptable. So it's I don't see a quick path for them to really get back to competitive. This is the when they for those with short memories, or maybe not as old as the two of us, when they call Fernando Alonso world champions because he won in a Renault.
Yep.
So it's been a long fall from there to here. Like, this should not be down there at the bottom. And with Cadillac coming in, with Audi throwing money into Sauber, are they going to be 11th soon? Like,
that's what it seems like.
Yeah, it's a tough to see a way back from them.
I mean, who knows? What I think might be interesting is to see if that might be a team that would want to sell, to somebody else.
But it's a cash cow, though. They don't need to sell it. Yeah. They show up and they get revenue sharing. So that's why these teams don't fold anymore. There is an incentive to spend less and just circle the back. It doesn't matter.
But that's the thing. I mean, it is in a sense, but then, on the other side of it, I mean, think about it. When they were doing good, they were Renault, right? When they had Alonso, when they had Flavio Briatore, when they were using those screaming V10s and those beautiful orange or yellow and blue, Renault cars back in early to mid 2000s, they were Renault. They swapped it to Alpine because Alpine is supposed to be their performance brand, supposed to be their special brand or whatever, and they just haven't shown anything. They haven't. I don't even know. I think the last Alpine road car that they announced was like an electric Renault 5 like clone that's an old like Group B rally car looking thing. Like you don't hear about those cars as being anything good on the road. As well as now their Formula One team isn't doing good either. It's like where I understand it's a cash cow that there's still money coming into the race team, but how is that helping your company as a total? Mercedes-Benz wins on Sunday, they're going to sell more cars the next day. It's the old adage: win on Sunday, sell on Monday. But Renault, I don't even know if this is helping. I don't even know if the Alpine Formula One team is helping the brand of Renault anymore. I don't know if they're still if they're making in the thought process of somebody who's buying a car say, oh yeah, I forgot they have a Formula One team. They must be doing good. No, they're not doing good. This is let's maybe go look at a Mercedes AMG car that's going to be the same price as any of those Alpine A110s or the Renault 5, electric car, like I said, that they have. So it's like, it's one of those situations. It's how does this team help them as a total in Renault? They don't. Get rid of the team. Swap it out. Give it to, we have Ford coming in to work with Red Bull. Imagine if Ford bought that team and it became a Ford Formula One team. And they came out and went after Ferrari again. We had a Ford versus Ferrari situation again. I mean, we're talking pipe dreams here, but it doesn't help that team out anymore. It doesn't help that company out anymore.
It does help them make money though, and if so, what you're saying is true because Mercedes is winning races. If they've obviously concluded they cannot build an engine win.
Yeah.
Whatever the reasoning went into that, they decided we're not going to win. Then use baseball as an example, right? Mm-hmm. If you're competing for the World Series, if you're the Yankees and the Dodgers, you spend ungodly amounts of money and you get it back. There's no incentive to be like the Reds and spend money and finish in the middle. The Marlins make more money because they don't spend anything and they get the money out the back end. And there's no one at their games and they stink and it doesn't matter. And Formula One's got a similar setup in that if you're at the very top, like Ferrari makes just prints money.
Well, they also
Red Bull makes money, Mercedes makes money, McLaren makes money. If you're competing and winning races, you make money. Those middle ones, there's no incentive to go from like ninth to fifth. You don't make more money doing that. You better prestige, like we spent a bunch of time talking about Williams and how, but that's not going to make them any more money than being ninth. Yeah. And that's where the problem is. If they thought they could get to 1, 2, compete for races, win them, that's different. They don't think they can. They clearly don't think they can do that because they chuck their engines. I mean, they're like, we're not doing this anymore. So that's the reality of where they're at, and I think it's going to be a long time before you see that team competitive again.
Yeah. Which is sad, like I said, because they were such a good team in those early aughts, so it would be nice. Maybe go back, maybe like I said, sell to somebody else who wants to come in. Which I guess brings us into Cadillac too, because they did announce their car this weekend.
Yep, they did.
Which was kind of an interesting announcement. Who do you think is going to be in that seat?
I mean, there were rumors, right? They kind of had who was it in there? I'm like spacing on it.
Checo.
I mean, that's just a terrible idea because he sucks. But
come on, I would put Checo in that Cadillac. I think would be a midfield car or a good midfield car.
We don't. I mean, the car might be terrible. We don't know what the car is. Like, we
don't know what any of these cars. We don't know what any of these cars are going to be next year. We're talking all this crap about Alpine right now. Alpine could come out next year and have nailed that new car setup, can put that Mercedes engine in it, and they could be winning races from the get-go. We don't know about what these cars are going to look like next year. We don't know how they're going to be set up.
Yeah, I'd be shocked if Cadillac comes out the gates with like a midfield car.
Like I said,
without having any like track.
Did you think Braun was going to win any races in 2009?
I mean, they had, it was the Honda. It wasn't there.
But it was the Honda without that engine.
If Cadillac showed up with the Red Bull and just rebadged it, I think they could win races. Like, that's not what's happening. They're building it from scratch.
No, but they're coming into Formula One fresh with years now of planning and setting up and getting all the everything ready for it. Like they've been we're talking about all these other teams that have been working on these 2026 cars for the past year and a half maybe. These guys have been working on this 2026 car for 5 years now. We've been talking about another team coming into Formula One. And with the Andretti, connection with all that they've been working on this team for all these years now, like that could be another one of these situations. Nobody knows what these cars are going to be like next year. They're smaller, they're lighter, they've got more aerodynamic surfaces on them that are movable. It's gonna be interesting going into next year. Next year's gonna be fun. This year's great because of how competitive everybody is, because they're all mastered these cars. Next year it's gonna be a toss up. Next year, you got half the teams running the same engine with the Mercedes engines. The other half of the teams are you know either Ferrari engine in the majority of them, or now you got 4 cars that are going to be running. Wait, no, because well, Honda is sticking with RB, right? Or are they going to Ford too?
No, I think they're sticking with their power unit, right?
With Honda, right?
Yeah, I think so.
So you got
Well,
Aston Martin and
Honda.
Honda. Yeah, you got Aston Martin and Honda, and then you're going to have, the Ford Red Bull engine.
Yeah.
So they're going to have the only team with the different engine. Realistically, is going to be that Red Bull, and we'll see how that plays out. There's going to be a lot of movement next year, and there is a possibility for one of these teams to jump up from the midfield, and who knows? Maybe that's what they're looking for. Maybe that's what they're banking on. You seem to think that they're just checked out and that they don't care anymore. Man, I don't see that. I don't see any of these teams being like that. Hopefully, in my perspective, I mean, hope that none of these teams
is
are like
actively giving away assets that would actually help them develop. Like McLaren's winning with a Mercedes engine. It's hard to do that though, to win with someone else's engine competing against them. If Alpine really thought, hey, we can build a championship car here and win, they would do it with their own engine. Like the fact that they're not, to me, is a give up. With that said, look, Checo is terrible. So like, if that car's in the midfield, it's a great job developing the car. But it's not because Checo is driving it. Like that's totally just like we're gonna get the Mexican audience. It's typical like lame-brained crap where the other driver was Zhao. Like, I mean, it's totally just
Zhou won you. That's right.
I mean, that's not trying to win. That's trying to get eyeballs. Like, come on.
I can't agree. I can agree with you on
that. That's year one
mistake,
man. That's year one mistake. Where we're gonna get the Mexicans or we get the Chinese to cheer this team on, and it's like, then you realize you made a mistake. In year 2, it's like, are we gonna get serious drivers? I mean, we've seen other teams go through these cycles of like, we'll do it for the eyeballs, and they realize, okay, we actually need to develop this car correctly. And Checo was past it. He one time was a solid driver. That time is come and gone, and Zhao was never good enough for Formula One. And those two guys in a brand new team we'll see. But we'll see. Two weeks from now is did you say this before the show or on the show? I don't remember, but it's Imola.
Before.
So we're finally into the European part of the schedule, and the schedule changed this year. If you're used to Monaco being on Memorial Day weekend, that's not happening. So there's a triple header. So Imola next week, Monaco the week after, and then Memorial Day weekend is Spain. So 3 in a row after this week. All right, so I guess we'll be back next week to talk about the preview Imola and see if McLaren can dominate in Europe the way they have so far.
I guess we'll see.
Yep. All right, thanks for joining me, Evan.
Not a problem.
All right, see y'all.
Bye.